we have William Hughes with us. William, hello, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for inviting me to talk, Eduardo. I
So
appreciate it.
very excited, so very excited that we have this opportunity to finally connect after so much that has been going on uh, with us, with the story of us as we connected through the other virus that that has been out there killing the world, but we kind of realized that we are only killing ourselves. And now with the whole coronavirus thing, I just wanted to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself. So if you would like to tell us more about you.
Sure. So the first thing is I would like to say I challenge the whole concept of there being a virus. There might be a particle, but virus has certain connotations to it that I'm very dubious about. So my background, I'm a graduate, a science graduate. So my postgraduate studies were medical neuroscience, preceded by epigenetics. So that's my orthodox training. Subsequent to that, I studied NLP. So that gave me some grounding in counseling and technique, hypnosis, and a few other things. But yeah, all my formal training is science background.
Sounds amazing. Tell me about that virus concept that you hold. What is it?
So okay, there's some evidence, dubious evidence, but you can see particles under an electron microscope. An electron microscope is something that can resolve things down to tiny, like a nanometer particle size. Or nanometer sized particles, I should say. So when you identify these particles, calling them a virus might be jumping the gun a little bit. Let's say they've been given this label virus, but virus seems to have a lot of connotations that come with it, that it's pathogenic, that it's transmissible. There's all these theories around these particles that they can detect. So for the last 3 decades, I think it's around 30 years now, there's been a competing theory, and it's called exosome theory. It's EXOSOME,
Hmm.
exosomes. Now, that the exosome theory is that particles are generated by cells in the body that are undergoing a repair. So they have an assistive function. They assist biology, or they assist the cell to recover from certain conditions. Now, the major difference here is obviously that virus, the connotation is that it's dangerous and harmful and causative, whereas the definition of the exosome, if you like, is that it's restorative, repairing, and also internally produced. It's something that's endogenous, so from within.
Okay. So there is,
So
sorry,
the
sorry to
thing is,
interrupt. I just want to make very clear this. Are you saying that what we think of a virus, instead of being a dangerous pathogen that exists like a parasite to harms us, it is its own existence is to help us heal
it's
or
restorative.
restore it? Okay.
Yeah. So this is a problem that I have. Most people don't know about this. Dr. Harmer, the founder of German New Medicine, when he talks about viruses, he always he supplements the word virus with if they exist, and then that they have a beneficial or restorative. They're involved in a repair process. Now, that work, he began his work more than 40 years ago.
Wow.
So, 30 years ago is really, I think, the birth of exosome theory. But the difference is here, these two particles appear virtually identical under an electron microscope. They just have different names.
Which two? I mean, what we
An
know about.
exosome and a virus. as far as I understand, they're identical under an electron microscope.
But there's a possibility that there are two of them.
Possibility.
Okay.
But then I start thinking, well, why would nature produce something that is pathogenic? So I start looking at the concepts here that we've been indoctrinated with, and it seems that for probably centuries, millennia, humans seem to engage in a warlike mentality. There seems to be plenty of record of this. And that warlike mentality seems to have led to an overreach of understanding of nature, so that nature is all at war. So we are at war with our germs. Now, I recall maybe 15 years ago, especially in the US, there was a huge focus on germs and killing germs, and we need antibiotics, and we need stronger antibiotics because germs are becoming more resistant to the current antibiotics. So it's this constant trying to dominate nature. Whereas from observation, I look at nature and humans as part of that, as we have a synergistic relationship to nature and all aspects of nature. When we try to compete or combat or control nature, that's when things seem to go horribly wrong. And I would look at germ theory as a horribly wrong theory, right down to viral theory. And that's something that keeps getting left off a lot of medical terms. The word theory, immune system, for example, that's a theory. You know, if you can find an immunologist anywhere that can explain how the immune system works to you, I think you may have found a liar. And that's coming from an immunologist who was unable to get licensed in Australia. He was an immunologist in South Africa, and he explained that to me. He said, if you find someone that can explain the immune system to you, you found a liar.
In that respect, I kind of connect very deeply with what you're saying because I've been in a process of healing myself, and to understand my own immune system, I had to understand a lot more than just physiology, and I had to go through emotions and spirituality and understand that we humans are a lot more than just a body that
May, may,
works like a
I offer you,
machine.
may I offer you a different understanding of immune system?
Yes, of course, please.
So the concept of immunity would be something like being Switzerland granted immunity in a world war. So it's a term that relates, if you like, to war behavior, and immunity gives you protection from something. So that's the immune system theory, is that we have this system that if stimulated correctly uh, I don't want to get into vaccination here, but if it's uh,
Strong and
manipulated,
yes,
then you can be granted immunity by some outside party. An immunity is something that has been purported to cause a pathogenic sort of reaction, a disease or disease response.
yes.
So immunity, look at war. So in a synergistic world, you would consider it a support system. So you don't have an immune system, you have a support system. And understanding how to support the support system could be very beneficial. But trying to manipulate an immune system to give you protection from a perceived threat, I think that's a little bit of bent thinking or manipulated thinking.
I totally understand. I coming from. Um, I used to have a very strong immune system. I used to feel like I wouldn't. I never got sick before I began getting sick. Uh, when I was a kid, I felt like I was protected in some way in terms of my health, in terms of colds, and I was never I was never sick if it wasn't sick out of fear or abuse. it wasn't out of my body not being able to protect itself. It was like my external factors were pushing my body to get weaker. And but through my first big illness was cancer, and then the diagnosis of HIV positive, and those two kind of brought my defenses, kind of mental defenses, at least. I mean, what I believed about my own body brought down my strength. And
I'm glad you added the word diagnosis to the HIV. So what I would suggest is you add that word to cancer as well. Having cancer, you had a cancer diagnosis, and having HIV was a HIV diagnosis.
yes,
So it's quite subjective. The whole thing is quite subjective. So understanding the challenges you've been through regarding HIV and growing learning about that, what would you call it, concept.
yes.
The learnings that you've had in that, they can be applied almost across the board.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I can understand that now because through the process of observation, as I was telling you before, I kind of became aware that what we believe of ourselves and our bodies, our own reality of what life means or is, changes completely the relationship that we have with our body, with our health, with the way we heal and the way we react to elements that might feel like threatening, like
You, you've
viruses, stuff
touched
like
on
that.
something. You've touched on something very important there. So everything in my understanding of biology, and that really comes from German New Medicine. Um, Changes in our biology or changes in our cells are inspired by biological conflicts. So when we encounter something in our environment that is threatening to us, for example, and we can't deal with that threat. So that could be the lack of rain has resulted in no produce, in no food. So our environment is not supplying us the security of food. So without that security of food, there's an internal conflict running. It's like, I need food, but I can't find food. So there's an adaptation now. Biology is incredibly adaptive and a lot stronger than many salespeople, especially in health industries, would have you believe. That if it suits them to have you believe that you're frail, that you're quite destructible, easily destroyed. You need the most refined
Yes,
products. So this is just marketing. So we are incredibly adaptable. So if there was no food, that would present a conflict, and it would be literal. It's an environmental problem, but you can still have, and this is where your conversation was leading, you can still have that same problem figuratively. That is that even though there's food on the table, because you don't know how you're going to pay the credit card this month, you could still have a starvation conflict.
or you
Even
simply
though
believe, yeah, yes. Even though, sorry.
even though there's food on the table in front of you, you could still be worried about starving.
Oh,
So this,
100%.
it's not this figurative. I'm not sure whether it's unique to human beings, but what we see is that dis-ease or disease, if you could say it to me, disease comes from dis-ease. So this unease in the psyche, if you like, so a
Yes,
worry. Um, humans are very good at holding these problems figuratively and keeping them going. So this might be someone in in traffic somewhere and traffic's not moving, there's nothing happening around them, and they're banging their fists on the steering wheel of the car and screaming at the top of their lungs. Yet there's nothing in their literal environment that's threatening them. They're not doing anything. They're not going anywhere. No one's threatening them. So we have this figurative ability to create a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, just as well as we create solutions, but
Yeah.
some people are a little bit more problem focused. And humans a biological entity, we tend to suffer a lot of illness or
Yeah.
disease.
Yes.
The secondary to that in nature, what I would say I would see is an awful lot of domesticated animals suffer. And that's, we put them in unnatural situations. If you see dogs on the street, what do? Are they usually by themselves, or would they tend to group?
It is a group.
Yeah, they're a pack animal, the same
Yeah.
as any herd animal or whatever. They tend to be in groups. But how many people do you know own a dog, one dog, no other pet, and keep it locked up in an apartment for the entire day while they're at work?
Hmm.
That is a dreadful environmental stress, a literal environmental stress for that animal.
Yeah.
So they
Yes.
tend to suffer. When they recover from that stress, they suffer.
I mean, I'm telling you, I totally understand what you're saying. It's like I'm getting the scientific confirmation of of my observation.
Mhm.
I saw through the years how the mind, because I do have a very clear separation of the mind, the ego mind, the identity that is created by the brain or the cells that are within the brain that are gonna be dead whenever I die and were born whenever I was born, and another level of consciousness that somehow, um, like a cell, is like it surrounds the other mind, and this one is beyond any limitation of fear or death or sorry, or lack or any of that. I mean, it's beyond all limitation,
You,
and
you
that what
mentioned,
doesn't fear.
yeah, you mentioned something important there, observation. And I would say that the science of German new medicine, and all science really, should be observational science. The purpose of which is to take a collection of observations and put them together to form a theory. And the benefit of a theory is that it can help you predict an outcome. So if I drop this lead ball, it's going to hit the ground. That's a theory.
Yes,
But when you've observed it happen 100% of the time in the past, then your theory is probably good and it will predict the outcome.
yes,
What the theory, doesn't account for is outside influences. Like there could be a truck coming through and collect that ball or something on the way to the ground, or whatever it is. There are things that can break the theory, but when that happens, you take the new data and you incorporate all of the old data and the new data, and you create a new theory which says a lead ball will fall to the ground except if a truck is passing through at the same time that it's falling or something. This is the benefit of science. This is what science was all about. So observation is key, and given that, I accept. We have our five senses. So touch, sight, sound, smell, taste. We have these senses, but I would say that we also have an internal sense of things, and I think this is where you were headed. You have an internal connection to sense, or some people might call it intuition, or something like that, or maybe spirit, but a connection to some other sense.
beyond
And
any logic.
well, the thing in science is we only tend to believe what we can measure. But how do I measure that internal response to something? So even though we can't detect it, that doesn't mean it isn't.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So this is perhaps one of the dangers of science is there's a tendency to dismiss things that we can't measure.
Measure.
Yeah, and I personally don't find that appropriate
Yeah.
behavior. I think that that's potentially dangerous. You could miss a lot of things just by not opening acceptance to
The
that.
mind to what is unmeasurable or is limitless or
Yeah.
is, yep. Well, how easy or how, I mean, because we're talking about detaching from a belief, like the germinology and the approach to pathogens and our own immune system and stuff like that, to a very different approach, a different science that might not be as new as we think. Maybe it's as old as the other one or even older. But the transition from one belief or approach to the next one. I mean, how easy has it been for you, or what are the steps you've taken to kind of detach from one and move to the other one and be able to let go
Okay,
of,
well, that would be, if I understand your question correctly,
yes,
that would be my own observation,
okay,
which science is founded on anyway. But in my observation, through my own experiences, so after being diagnosed HIV positive back in 2009, I believe, that put me under an extraordinary stress. And I was very worried about my blood at that point because that's supposed to be the source of infection and
yes,
where the easiest pathway of transmission is. So every morning I'm waking up looking in the mirror and saying to myself, you have a killer in your blood now, you have a killer in your blood. It took me about 3 months. So the first thing I did after the diagnosis was I turned my scientific mind and my ability to research and read a scientific white paper and fairly well understand one. It took me about 3 months to realize that there's actually nothing in science to support the theory of HIV. So, regardless of that, what had been happening, and this is something that's identified well in German New Medicine, when you worry about your blood or worry about bleeding or someone else bleeding even, what it can do is induce a collapse in your count of thrombocytes, which is a blood clotting, it's a platelet. It's a component of the blood. So what that does is it makes bleeding easy. So without having thrombocytes in my blood, I was bruising incredibly easily. And if I nicked a gum or something, brushing my teeth or flossing my teeth or something, it would bleed profusely. So I had all these problems. So my questions then go to the medical community. Well, what would cause this? HIV would cause this. And anything that happened to me from that point on, post diagnosis, was due to HIV. And I thought, wow, what a wonderful catch all for these people to not have to think. They're not thinking, they're not processing. So, why would this be? How does this tiny RNA virus, it's not even DNA, it's RNA. So that's one strand of DNA of the dual helix. It's a single strand. So how would it be responsible for this myriad of complaints? And the more I looked into that, the less evidence there was of that. In fact, there was no evidence of that. And no one could prove that even if they tried to.
that was
But
enough for you to kind of let go.
it was the beginning of my understanding that medical did not have the answers at all. the best they had was guesswork. These days, I understand that better. Medical science is composed of around 5 to 6,000 theories. Now, a theory in science, when it's broken, like I said, you have to throw the whole theory out. You take the new data along with the old data and you compile a new theory. That's not what's been happening. So what's happening in science these days is they just bend the theory to fit, or oh, there's an exception to it here. That's not how we do science. It's not how we're supposed to do science. So it was my first question. It was
Yes.
my questions to the medical community resulted in frustration more than anything. And these days, I can usually get most GPs or specialists even to the phrase "I don't know" or "we don't know"
Yeah.
within about 3 questions.
Yep. 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 You know something? What about? I mean, something that I also observed and needed to put into practice was that human race, we have become very lazy in our approach to change and transformation, especially when we are thinking about our own change and transformation. If we're talking about healing, if we're talking about learning, if we're talking about anything, it needs to be pretty much sitting on a desk and be able to do it in one place and with a very less effort involved. And
It's product of grooming.
yes, it is. It is something that we are used to take a pill and let all the work be done by that pill, and have no responsibility on the process. And
So
uh, and I find that in my education as a yoga teacher, Kundalini, because it's not just the yoga that you find in the gyms, but it's a consciousness kind of yoga. It's the yoga of consciousness. It's about elevating the way we think and the way we see ourselves, and it's an approach of hands on. If we have an emotional imbalance, you just don't sit and meditate on it. You work it out. You create poses, you do breath work, and you sweat, and you make it happen. So your mind uh, produces the connections and the neurological links to believe that we are creating solid structures and solid change. And that is
so
something that now people don't want to do it. It's like, I don't want to invest time in my own transformation, in my own desires. You talk a lot about conflicts. We don't put enough time in resolving those conflicts.
what you've just been talking about, there's a few ideas going through my head there. So some people might think that I'm coming from a place of intellect, a higher intellect, and that how would you put it? I think about this two ways, that you could look at it from that perspective and say, well, this is an educated, this is someone putting together facts and so on. But I also, you should never disqualify the power in what you're saying, which is it's almost like getting to the root of the problem. Because when you look into German new medicine, you're going to hear the term psyche, and they're talking about an aspect of you that is everything about you, your personality, the way you handle things, the way you respond to things. It's who you are, but it's something that's intangible. The psyche is intangible. The mind, the brain, yeah, okay, we know where that is. We know where all the organs of the body are, but the psyche, who knows? So what you're talking about is approaching things from the level of psyche. So to have a physical change in the body, to have an adaptive process begin, it would take a biological conflict to induce that. So, and that's, a good example is cancer, or the definition of cancer. It's this cellular change, but it's actually responding to it's an adaptive pressure. An environmental challenge is inducing a response in the organ to adapt to suit the challenge that is there or perceived to be there. So, in all that, um, if you can target the conflict. So let's say, we talked about starvation before. You could target the conflict and go, well, how can I pay my credit card bill? And then so if you felt you couldn't pay the credit card bill to put food on the table, then paying the credit card bill might take that pressure off. And then the adaptation that is developed to cope with a starvation situation would reverse. It would basically go into a resolution phase and undo itself. So now you've got this situation where there's symptoms, detectable symptoms, and they've come on as the process has gone into recovery, has gone into this repair mode. And that's been done by literally finding the money to pay the credit card. But there's also the figurative sense, which is kind of where you're headed there with the meditation process. It's like it's changing who you are sufficiently so that the lack of money is no longer an issue. So this is the question would be for oneself: how can I make this lack not a problem? How can I make this so it's not significant to me? And then again, the resolution process would begin and the recovery would start. So yeah, there's these two approaches. I mean, there's a lot of dichotomies in life, but that one's a good one to look into.
I think they work together perfectly, to be honest. I mean, we I can talk about something that this morning I had to do. I remember that I was told you before about sensation of having blocked or tight chest and lungs, and that has been every single day. Every single day I've been having it. One day I feel like I'm about to collapse and have and then I need oxygen because I cannot breathe. And the next day my lungs feel open and clear, and it's a constant reminder of what that there is a conflict within myself. This morning I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was feeling it. I was feeling it, and I was feeling it strong. And I realized that I had this sensation on the top of my chest, it feels like it's on top of my lungs, and it's just the very, um, I mean, the very high end of breathing. It's like going deep, really deep into the feeling safe and feeling supported,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and that for me created, okay, I need to find out what kind of sensation I'm feeling, what kind of sensation, what kind of conflict it is. And because it was very close to this part, I felt it in this part. So I felt like I needed to be very clear on what is important to me, speaking my truth, saying what is uh, real and important, and it takes a lot. It takes a lot because it's not just. I mean, I do my meditation, I do the yoga, and I try to keep healthy. But the real challenge comes when it comes about talking the truth, talking about, okay, what experience do I have right now that is blocking that truth to be told. And and it is it is a very difficult situation to have that leap of faith, because it feels like a leap of faith, like I'm going to do something I've never done before or haven't done in a very long time. And it feels, it is very challenging. It's not
Okay.
as easy as it sounds. What do you think
So
of?
I'd like to I'd like to point a few things out, but I'd also like to ask you a few questions as well. So when you're saying that feeling like I can't breathe and there's
Yes,
a restriction in your breathing.
and a
So
pain at the very end.
okay, so what I would say is that focusing on that restriction, focusing on that symptom, is more likely to heighten your level of stress and perpetuate an adaptation.
Okay.
To keep you in an adaptive phase, which it may have a number of different outcomes depending on how you perceive the threat. But what I'd like to know is right now, if I have you take a really deep breath in for me, fill your lung, and now release, exhale. Now, how restricted does that feel? Is there restriction there?
It does. It is. Yes, it is
Okay.
restriction.
So could you give me an idea of the level of restriction? Zero would be nothing. There's no restriction and it's perfectly normal breathing and I can breathe as full as I like, a full lung. So is the restriction a zero or would it be a 10, which is, like I can barely breathe at all?
It
What
feels.
level?
It feels. Imagine that this ball is my lungs. It feels like I can breathe, but there is something like avoiding for more expansion. Like there is a limit put.
All right. So where would you put that limit? Would it be 6 out of 10? Would it be two
It,
out of 10? What would
it
it
would
be?
be a 6 or 7 out of 10.
All right. And is it more on the way in or would it be more on the way out?
Definitely on the way in.
Okay. So my thinking here is that this would be a laryngeal constriction, a type of asthmatic response, if you like. But what I want to ask you is, when did you first notice this? So in the recent episode, because the last time we talked, that was clear. You
Yes,
felt
it comes and goes. It's very. I have to do a lot of work mentally and emotionally and physically to kind of like everything is fine and give myself the support. But as soon as I lose grip of that structure and begin to focus on something else, it's like
let me just suggest something to you: mental, physical, and there was another term you used: mental,
emotional.
emotional. The place where all of those things connect would be the psyche. So the psyche, let's say it's resident here, but it's kind of who you are. If we can get the change in the psyche, think of it like a template. So getting that template correct, everything will flow. Everything resumes correctly from that template. So let me get back to the question. So when did you notice this restriction? Did you say it was this morning or yesterday or this week?
This week has been there every day.
Okay, every day this week. So
Every
did it
day.
begin on Monday? Did it begin on
It
Sunday?
began on Friday afternoon.
Okay. So tell me about Friday afternoon. What
Uh,
happened?
well, the thing is, I met someone, and it was the first time that I invited him to my place, and
Mhm.
I had dinner prepared and everything. But the problem is that this guy is negative, HIV negative. He's taking PrEP, but he is very cautious. He's very afraid, although he doesn't want to kind of admit it. He's someone who sneezes once and goes running to the cabinet to get antibiotics.
Okay.
So
So let me ask you this. What was your fear?
my fear probably was telling how his fear is affecting me.
Uh-huh.
And that although I am enjoying his company a lot, he has to deal with his fear before he gets close to me because
Can
he
I
doesn't
ask you
want
to
me
take
to
a breath?
help him. And yes.
Can I ask you to take that deep breath now? Take another deep breath.
And I get a lot of this phlegm coming out. So right now it feels completely free.
0 out of 10.
Zero. 0 out of
Yeah.
10.
So I want you to understand why I asked those questions. So I know from experience, you're right wired. That is, when you clap your hands in front of you, your right hand is dominant. It'll be the one on top or the one active or both.
Yeah.
So as a right-hander, and I know that you're gay, so it tells me a few things. You're in a type of constellation, we call it, in the cerebral cortex. That is that there's how'd you put it? There's a biological conflict that has affected both left and right hemisphere of your cerebral cortex. Now, I know that this recent problem has come in as a tertiary or beyond issue, and it's affected your larynx. Now, I've back worked all this through, this is advanced German new medicine. The conflict that you experienced on Friday was what we term a territorial fear. So this is a fear. It's a type of threat. It's a threat to your territory, a threat to your space. So that's either your home. It's like, what am I bringing into my home, or what am I bringing into my life, and how does this make me feel? Well, I don't feel good about this. Um, your territory could also be your car, your work, your family, your friends. All of these things can be territories. But it sounds to me like this was a gentleman you brought into your home territory, and that obviously it's a territorial fear.
Yes.
So understanding that fear and what your preoccupation may have been about him being in your territory, that is going to give you an understanding. My thoughts on this would be for you to, because you said you keep experiencing or re-experiencing this, my thinking would be, how do we get you to understand that it's not important? What he thinks or what anyone thinks of you is none of your business. This is your experience, no one else's. So,
Yes.
what's your experience going to be of this situation? And that's the importance. If you're not experiencing it as a conflict, then why would you have a symptom? There's no need for a symptom.
Okay. So you're saying that it's a belief that is making me feel like I'm losing ground.
Correct. It's like a threat to your ground. So
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. A husband and wife standing by the kitchen sink doing the dishes one night, and they look into the yard and there's a shadowy figure standing outside the gate.
Yes.
It's outside the territory, but there's a threat that it will come in. So a male response to that would be to actually grab a baseball bat and head out and challenge the threat. That's a
Yes.
male response. A female or a feminine type response would be gather the kids behind me and retreat to the innermost sanctuary where it's safest. So those are the two responses. So the experience for you, it sounds like it's a territorial fear. There's a threat with him intruding in your space somehow. There's an element of discomfort, which I think you fairly well described.
Yes.
Do I really want to let this person in?
Yes. And you know something, now when you were talking, I think it goes to HIV. I think because I do feel like invaded. I do feel like invaded. There is something, like you said, when you talk about the blood part or that you had something in blood. I do feel like there is something that that's still there. I'm not gonna say in the lungs, but in my system.
Okay, so here, the experience of this. So, first of all, testing HIV positive in the broader community, that's a tiny amount of people. So it can be very isolating experience, and I've been through this. So the next component of this is that even inside the gay community, there is discrimination about being HIV positive still to this day, and I see that within the gay community. There's judgment and discrimination about it. That's changed somewhat with the introduction of prescribing toxic medication to people who are perfectly healthy in the form of PrEP. But it's still, when someone around me, for example, is identifying that they're taking PrEP, I look at them and think, okay, you're not only ignorant, you haven't done your research, and you've accepted someone else's word at face value that this is somehow going to benefit you. The reality is it'll
Keep it
benefit a
safer.
medical system that will make you sick and then prey on you for probably the rest of your life. So my challenge now is, do I want to spend my time with someone like that?
It
Yeah,
is
of course.
true.
But again,
It is so true. It is so true.
now it's going to a point where, out of being this tiny part of the community that's HIV positive, I don't believe in HIV. There's no substantiation for it, which makes me this much of this much of this much. It's so isolating. It's a
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I really comprehend your situation there. I've been through it in many ways, and tried to believe that somewhere out there there is someone, another gay man, who is intelligent enough and dedicated enough to discover the facts and the truth about this situation. The reality is we need each other,
It's true.
and isolating from one another is no answer. In fact, it's a pathway to disease.
Absolutely. Yes, 100%. But it's, as you say, it's so difficult to
They're out there. They're out there. The people that know it are out there. I know I've got several friends of mine who are
um,
HIV negative. They don't take PrEP, and they have no belief in the HIV system, in the theory of
yes,
HIV. So there are people out there, and there are, given the current situation and its link to medical, there's a massive amount of exposure coming.
yeah,
It gives me heart to see doctors coming together to challenge the orthodoxy and how we're being pushed. There's also a concern because if they don't refute the entire system and go back to learning observationally, then we could wind up back in an adaptation of the
yeah.
same old system, and that concerns me.
It takes so much. I mean, that's where taking the leap of faith comes into play because For example, I know this morning I realized I have to tell this guy, no, that one, I cannot meet whatever he wants, that just cuddling, it's okay, but we have to put a limit because he's cuddling. I mean, I want more, obviously. I mean, I want a full relationship where there is no limitation, when we can
Yeah.
explore ourselves fully and creatively and just openly.
Yeah, it sounds like you're hitting the distinction between a transactional relationship and a relationship with some
Yes.
depth.
That's
So, oh, wow, that was a Freudian.
yes.
So yeah, so a deeper relationship.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's difficult to have that when there's no communion of the mind or
Yeah.
communion of spirit, the soul, whatever it might be.
And speaking the truth is when it comes difficult, because now I'm putting in the danger the little relationship that I've been able to build in the last month and a half that we known each other. Saying, well, okay, yes, it could work, but it's not working.
So yeah, my question, and I've had to face this myself,
Yeah.
is how much do I want to be my partner's teacher? It's I want an equal. I would really like someone I can walk beside,
Yep.
someone that understands me, and someone I can understand. You
Yes.
know, this is a collaboration. This is not me being the teacher and playing that role with a student
Yep.
and having a sexual relationship with them. That's not satisfactory.
Absolutely. And have the courage to say it face to face. I am so sorry, but this is not for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know how many people you know that are using PrEP. So, for anyone who's not aware of that, PrEP is pre-exposure prophylaxis. So it's taking medication to prevent infection, as it's understood.
Yeah.
I don't believe in infection. I hardly ever use the word. You can transmit things, but there are ways of doing that. And if anyone hasn't seen Dr. Robert Wilner injecting himself with HIV, is a 4-minute 40 video on YouTube, still hasn't been deleted yet, um, of a doctor in the US who repeatedly injects himself with HIV positive blood from a gentleman standing beside him who's been diagnosed as having AIDS. So he went through his life. He did this many times in front of cameras, press cameras, press events. It wasn't publicized because when he finally died of a heart attack, he was HIV negative. So the transmission is possible, but infection is a real. That's just
Infection of what? HIV, you mean? Or
with anything. It's anything. So, for example, we're all carrying TB, tuberculin, the microbe tuberculin. We're all carrying it. It's just that it's in a state of dormancy. It will only come active when it's required in the body. So if you've ever had a night sweat in your life, you've had TB, active TB. So people think, and this is all the poor education or miseducation that's out there. Everyone thinks that TB is associated with the lung. Yes, it is. It's also associated with almost any other endodermal tissue in the body. And anywhere there's been a growth of that endodermal tissue, has to be removed, if you like. It dies off, and then TB, tuberculin, goes active, and it eradicates. It's like having a billion microsurgeons in your body. It eats away cell by cell the dead tissue that's no longer required. So it's not infection. We can transmit it. And I'm glad of that. I've taken antibiotics before that would have eradicated TB out of my body. Now I know that I still have TB because I've had night sweats since then. So I know that I've recovered it from somewhere. I've got it. And the only issue with infection, and people ask this, washing your hands and clearing germs off your hands before you would operate on someone as a doctor, makes perfect sense, because if someone's being operated on, they're being attacked, if you like, by a knife or whatever it is. If you introduce a microbe that their body doesn't have a synergistic control over, you're asking for trouble.
Yes.
But if it's the germs or the microbes that they've got in their body that are existing in synergy with them, there shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
There'll be a control for that.
And I believe the same thing happens with the mind. Sometimes we have a very dirty mind with dirty thoughts. And I'm talking about dirty thoughts in terms of negative ways of talking to ourselves or talking to other people or talking about the world, fears, guilt, shames, and all this corrosive thinking that just creates a lot of rubbish,
Mhm.
literally, within ourselves. And we need to clear up that. We need to clean our minds. We need to clean our bodies as well of all the toxins that we constantly take. I mean, some of them we cannot stop taking, because if you live in a city like I do here in London, I mean, we're living within a close cycle of water. Our water is just constantly being recycled. We don't get water from the outside, very little. And so we constantly get water that has been filter over filter over filter, and with chemicals and chemicals and chemicals. And the food is the same. You leave a tomato outside and it stays there for a month and a half without rotting. It's like, how the hell this wrong? This can stay red and plump for so long. I mean, you see that we are ingesting so much toxins constantly. The
Yeah,
uh,
and there's a it's like you said, there's a cycle, but there's a product cycle,
yes.
and this is something that I'd probably like to make people aware of as well. Is that whenever anyone's selling you a product, you really need to examine what it is they're selling you and why, and remember that there's a strategy here that seems to be at play now, in a big way, and that is, it's they give you the problem, and then they get the reaction, and then they sell you the solution.
Yes,
So
that's the
the
new the ways.
first stage, they're selling you the problem mentally. Believe that this is a problem, believe that there's something here. Now you believe it and you're reacting to it out of fear. Here you go, just buy our product and you'll be fine.
Yes,
This,
yes,
this happens everywhere, and it happens sadly. I see a lot of this in alternate health.
yes,
So, especially even nutrition now, every second person I meet would be talking about nutrition and giving nutritional advice. And I have understood nutrition for decades really quite well, right down to cholesterol not being a problem. So, the concept that food is somehow going to save you, I could probably, off the top of my head, give you three names of people that have been the cleanest eaters, the most, what would you call it? Is it pernicious? I'm trying to think, but they're extremely fussy eaters. Everything's got to be organic and perfect and grown this way and consumed this way, and it can't
yes.
be cooked because cooking's going to kill you, and you add sugar and that's poison, and they're dead now.
You remember about
But
just imagine the level of stress they must put themselves in.
correct, correct. This is the problem. The stress is the issue. There was a clip recently with Donald Trump talking about, it was post his coronavirus episode, and yeah, he came out and he said the fear is worse than the disease, and he's correct on so many levels with that one. But
Yeah,
it's a bigger conversation. But yeah,
absolutely.
it's really the disease is the inducer of the disease.
It's
But
so true.
people think that stress causes the physical problem. It's not quite like that. There's a period of stress and that sets you up. It's an adaptive phase.
Yes,
But having symptoms during a period of stress in your life would not serve you to survive.
Yes.
So having symptoms is normally, it's the flip side of it, where we're recovering and restoring our body from the adaptations. We're recovering from the adaptations that were made during stress. And that means that the stress is off. It's a safe time to undergo a process that has symptoms attached to it.
Wow. Well, yes. I mean, I totally understand, and my God, it's like such a breath of fresh air to
Which is
hear it from
the,
somebody else and and be able to talk about it so easily. It's like, something. It is that is it. That's how I think we both have been able to stay alive through the disconnection of past beliefs uh, that were dragging us down and keeping us limited and disempowered and sick and
well,
afraid.
the installation of these ideas that
Yeah,
induce fear
yeah,
is causational. So I'm sure you're familiar with placebo. You were
yes,
touching on it with the meditative process. So understanding that placebo can be a word. It could be, let's say you're doing clinical trial for a drug, and the placebo, which is just a sugar tablet, is presented to the individual that's in the control group. And they say, so here's the tablet. It has the most amazing restorative properties, and it's just incredible. We see everyone fixed in 2 days on this tablet. That's setting their mindset to a great, it's like, oh, the solution is here.
yes,
But you can change their ideas about symptoms just by doing that. And that's the meditative process is kind of doing that. What people don't seem to acknowledge, and especially doctors, is nocebo. Some don't even seem aware of the term, but nocebo is the antithesis. That would be me passing that sugar tablet to someone saying, look, you have to take this, but it's going to make you really sick and probably kill you. But you have to take it, and if you don't, we'll force it into you. Can you see the stress that you're putting
of
someone on?
course,
You're setting them up. You're setting them up
of
for the
course.
problems. But that's nocebo, and I've used this a few times, but I have a cheeky term for it. I call it doctor's friend.
Yes.
So it tends to keep them in business.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what they say. I mean, you have to take this pill, which eventually can kill you because, I mean, you just have to look at the side effects that it has. It may not kill you in 5 years, but it might kill you in 20. But if you don't take it, whatever I'm telling you that you have can kill you in 6 months.
Yeah, I've got several young male friends that are taking prep,
Yeah.
and I warned them all years ago. It's been out for a couple of years now, I think, and they've been pushing that. All they're doing is increasing their drug sales. That's
Of
all.
course,
Like
of
rather
course.
than sell to people who've tested positive, why don't we just sell it to everyone? So
Imagine
they've opened their market. It's a brilliant strategy,
what
but
a great business, honestly.
the, the point of that is that all of those people, I warn them, your kidneys and your liver, especially your liver, will probably be the first thing to start showing problems. And that's because the liver tissue is some of the fastest replicating tissue in the body. And you're taking something that probably has a DNA chain terminator or something like that in it. So when DNA is doing its job, being replicated to produce new cells, it's being stopped in the
Right.
process. You know, not completely. Otherwise, you'd be dead in a few months probably. Which is what we were seeing within 2 years with AZT. Pretty much everyone who was on the full dose of AZT was long gone by 2 years. But the new medications are just uh, how would you put it? A gentler version of the same death. But the liver is the first thing usually to show up. And one young man was, can I buy you a drink? Oh no, I can't drink. It's like, oh, are you on the wagon? Are you giving up alcohol? No. The doctor did a liver test on me and said I shouldn't have alcohol. It's not functioning properly. Oh wow! And how long has that been going on? Oh, a few months after he started taking prep. But you know, it's these drugs, these medications that they call them, they're killing people from the inside.
Yeah. And they are killing people from their beliefs of self-empowerment.
Mm. And
This
the short
stress,
of that is they can't date anyone that would do that to themselves.
absolutely. I mean, it was so difficult. I mean, I got so stressed when he got sore throat. And the next day, sore throat, not a cold or flu, sore throat. And the next day, he began taking antibiotics. And I'm like, you know something? I This is way too much because I mean, you are with somebody that, according to your beliefs, can kill you, and you're taking a medication to protect yourself from someone like me. And I can see the level of fear that you are in terms of your own health and life. Because if a sore throat makes you go running to the doctor to get antibiotics, I mean, how much danger I am in that if you get anything, you will blame me out of your situation, or how tense is going to be the relationship, because we won't be able to live something relaxed and simple. It's going to be always this worry and fear in the back of our minds.
It's a setup for disease. So
Yes,
you know,
absolutely.
there's
Absolutely.
another conversation, and we should have that another
Yes,
day.
you should definitely have it. Will, I think, is there anything you would like to share to close this episode?
Well,
We have talked so much about so many things, but I think this was a beautiful, great beginning to
thank
start
you.
talking
You
about
know,
all this.
it's a pleasure to chat about it with open minds and listening ears.
Thank you.
So the one thing I would probably mention. So I'll do a shameless plug for myself, which is my website is William Hughes GNM, so short for GermanNewMedicine.com. And you can get in touch with me there. There is a contact form, or you can make bookings if there's something that you'd like to talk about.
I think that's very, very interesting, and I think many people would like to have a look on this and give it a try, because it's truly life changing and mind expanding and empowering.
Thinking back, yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Take a deep breath for me again. I just want to see.
Ah, thank you so much, Will. Thank you so much.
It's
Ah,
simple.
it's
It's
simple.
simple, but it's understanding the right questions.
Yes,
And all I do, you might be thanking me, but all I really do is I'm a facilitator. I'll just guide. So I'll ask the questions and let you go there. And when you understand what the conflict was, then you have choice. You have a
yes,
choice to either hang on to it or let go. And to me, it looks like the conversation we've had in that process, you've let it go.
yes. And I'm understanding even more
Yeah.
uh, that, as you mentioned, the conflict of losing ground, or how you call it?
It was a territorial fear we were
Territorial
discussing.
fear.
Yeah.
Territorial fear.
It's not really losing ground. That would be more like a territorial loss.
Yes,
But this is a fear which would come with your territory being compromised somehow. So a territorial fear could be as simple as the fear of contracting coronavirus.
yes,
So
yes,
can you see how people start to get breathing symptoms? You know, it's
absolutely.
very, that's just one interpretation of the fear.
Yes,
If someone's afraid of dying, then they'll get an adaptation in the lung, not just in yours was just in your larynx there, but yeah, you're talking about an adaptive process going on in the lung, which is alveolar tissue overgrowing, and they pack the lung. So the lung, it's getting thicker, if you like, with this alveolar tissue.
yes,
Then when you go into, if you have a scan, they go, well, you've got this growth inside your lung everywhere, and that's lung cancer. Or they put you on a ventilator, which forces air into your lung, And you can imagine, like when you've got really thick skin, for example, and you try and bend it or stretch it, it
It
ruptures.
breaks, of
So
course.
yeah, so you're seeing all these people on ventilators with their lungs exploding, and they're rupturing, and they've got holes everywhere in their lungs.
Yes,
That's this is the understanding. Yeah, and you've got doctors saying it looks like they've got an altitude sickness. An altitude sickness is when you're deprived of oxygen. That's the literal environmental challenge. The figurative challenge is what we call a death scare. I can't breathe.
yes,
So when you think you can't breathe, when you think there's a challenge to your breathing and you're struggling to get air, then the adaptation, yes, yeah, the
yes.
adaptation happens. So all
That's a
this is
fear.
deal with your fears. Don't cart them with you. Don't carry them with you. Identify them and deal with them. The problems we have today are the conflicts we didn't resolve yesterday.
Yes, absolutely. Wow. Thank you so much. I mean, thank you, and thanks the knowledge of all this information and wisdom. To be honest, life changing. And I think if you agree and if you like the idea, next time to talk about the fear of dying, which I think it's a
That's
very interesting,
that's a
powerful
yeah.
concept.
Yeah, and I suspect we could see more of that. I have fears for the population of Melbourne, Victoria at the moment. They're
Yes,
about to come off some severe restrictions. Now,
yes,
when that happens, the pressure comes off and the symptoms begin because now the environmental adaptation is not needed. So people's symptoms will appear as those adaptations reverse.
yes,
And I expect to see a lot of illness. And of course, they'll throw their hands in the air and go, oh, we've got another wave and we need to lock everyone down because it's transmissible.
yes.
It's infectious. It's all theory, all
And,
theory. It
and
doesn't fit
In London, we are in the other way around. We are about to go into lockdown, and everyone is fearing, and the masks and getting colder here. So people are beginning to have a respiratory symptoms of any kind, and uh, we will see. We will see how this week develops.
anything.
Will Will Hugh? We have your website, Will Hugh GNM.
Yeah, Will Hughes. So
So
Hughes
dot
GNM. Yeah,
ENM
Will and
dot com.
William is the first part of that. William Hughes
William
GNM.
Hugh.
That's
Perfect.
how you can reach me. But
Thank you so much for today, for this amazing chat and opening your heart, your mind, and all this knowledge to us. Thank you so very much. I will look forward to our next episode. I really enjoy this, and I'm very glad and grateful that we had this opportunity to share this information with
you're very
everyone.
welcome. Thank you for asking me to come speak.
Thank you so much. Well, until next time, then, which hopefully will be next Friday, same
So,
time.
yeah,
We'll talk
I mean,
about it.
yeah, we've got a great awakening coming. So yeah, who knows?
Who knows what's going to happen? Who knows what's going to happen? Thank you so much, Will. Until next time, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. And I will see you on our next episode. This is Eduardo Embres, and this is the
But
Embres Show. Thank you.
thank you.